presentation. In 6 months, in June, we have to come up with the 09-10 budget, and the projection now is that we're going to be $11.2 million in the red, to use the vernacular. And this is based on some projections that we have based on the slowing housing market and reduction in sales tax. What happens if over the next 6 months we're, let's say, 0.1% off, or some what would it seem like a de minimis amount, because there's an accumulative effect that we get. There's more delinquencies in property taxes, or not just a flattening of sales, but an actual decrease, or any of these other possible variables. And you've done a very good job of making projections, but we've made some assumptions. If they're wrong, how does that affect that? I mean, it makes it worse. That 11.2 number. How quickly can that expand? I guess is my question.
Well, what we've been dealing with over the past couple of months, even the past couple of weeks, I think has given us some indication about how quickly it can change. One thing I would like to point out is that we don't have, unfortunately, because of the lag time, we don't have real information specific to Fremont for this fiscal year yet. We will not get our cleanup payment for the third calendar quarter for sales tax until later this month, and we won't have information about our property tax collections until later this month. So what we have been digesting and applying to our specific circumstances here in Fremont is all of the news that we have been seeing on both the state and the nationwide level, the loss in jobs. We can see the foreclosures. We know that we had property appeals and reassessments, and we've heard from the assessor that it will be significantly more for next fiscal year. So we're doing the best with the information we have, but over the next couple of months we will have more information that is specific to Fremont itself, and that will help to better inform our assumptions and the numbers that we bring to you in February. Because
I mean, we're looking at our ending fund balance is going to be exactly at zero on June 30th. If the bad economy just sort of stays flat, slow payment on property taxes, and I guess if we're a little bit off, then we're going to be in the red, and we have to make some adjustments. I guess that's why you're coming to us on a biweekly basis.
But to hit the nail on the head, really, we won't have our first meaningful piece of information until February. So a lot of this, whether it's finance directors across the state of California and city managers for that matter, it's impossible. It is impossible to land on any kind of scientific methodology to determine what the numbers ought to be going into next fiscal year. It just defies logic. So we all compare notes. We do the best we can. We know our economy locally very, very well. We make all the adjustments, whether it's new businesses or ones that are significant and more often than not will probably be going out of business, and make every single calculation that we possibly can. We probably err on the side of being a little conservative. But having said that, if this is an economic free fall, then everything's just a new order, a new world. So and I don't know how you can really quantify that or have a strategy for that before the fact. It isn't going to be until we get that information that we'll be able to adjust. We think the numbers we have now are that we're using at this point in time are the culmination of, I guess, best professional estimate, gut, and a little methodology in the process. In February, the numbers will be that much more because we'll have real sales tax receipts. Yeah.
And that will help us focus on the private sector prong of this problem. Now I'd like to move to the public sector prong of the problem and the now $42 billion deficit. Refresh my memory, because state deficit, right? 42 billion state deficit. What's the range of possible municipal hits that Fremont could take if the state decides? I mean, is there a formula that we use, or is that?
Prop 1A, when it was passed, did provide some limits, but they apply those limits at the county-wide basis. So if they applied them evenly across every jurisdiction, it would be 8% of our property tax revenues that would be at risk. Whether they would apply them evenly is another question, because they could cause us to also absorb the county's share of that. They look at the amount that they can take on a county-wide basis and then divvy it up however they choose to divvy it up. So that's one piece of information. The other thing that we have learned over time is that there are other ways that they can get money from us in terms of additional fees, in terms of withholding payments from us for some period of time. Several months ago, they did withhold our gas tax for about 5 months as a cash flow measure. They have now remitted that gas tax, fortunately. For the past 2 months, we have not received any vehicle license fee revenue, because there simply wasn't enough to go around after the state took its share for administrative expenses. So we were very startled in October when we got no vehicle license fee revenue. We didn't get any again in November. We don't know if we will be getting any more of the balance of this fiscal year. And one thing that reflects is the decrease in sales of automobiles. So it's not just the rules under Prop 1A, but we've learned to not underestimate their creativity. They have a very big problem that they have to solve. The things that they are recommending at this point as means of solving that problem aren't palatable to anyone, frankly. So the governor has been very consistent in wanting to hold harmless local government, recognizing the important services that we provide. I don't know if that is ultimately, by the time everything is said and done, whether that will be possible.
So under 1A, we have $61 million. It's about $5 million that might, in the worst case scenario, that might be withheld by the state if they applied 1A, the letter of the law, and said, here's the 8%, and the county held back 8% of Fremont's.
I would not call that worst case. I think it could be more than that.
And we're not all about just the general fund around here. Let's not forget about the redevelopment agency and the $2.3 million that the state took. The legislative analyst office is proposing to the legislature that that $2.3 million be done in perpetuity with inflationary factors built in. So on the other side of the equation, on the redevelopment agency side of the equation, it's also pretty draconian. A lot of money there, and think of the policy implications involved in that if the state can now dip into the agencies with no rules and no protection. So that gives you something to ponder.
I have no more questions.
You're afraid to ask anymore. I don't really have any questions.